So welcome to this Data plus Maps Tableau user group. Our event will actually start now. And I see that I have misspelled the date. So don't worry, we are doing it today. We are not waiting till it's Thursday, but it's not. Well, maybe it's almost the 27th for you, WenBin, since you're in Singapore, so it's late, right?
Yeah, almost, but we're still on the 26th.
Well, that's how it is. Thank you, the DataFam, meaning everyone that are attending, who are supporting this user group, who are supporting other user groups. We wouldn't do this without you. And talking about members, I just copied this from from Bevy this morning. So we have had 606 chapter members of all time. Would be even cooler to have 666 though, but that's more of the our maiden song. But based out of these 606, there's actually more than 50,000 Tableau user group members in the world, in all of the user groups that exist. Rob is from the public user group. I think you have a bigger base than ours. But we're really proud to have been doing this for just a few years, and we have over 600 members and growing. So that's nice. The hosts of this user group, we have not been able to update our map properly because George is unfortunately, well, not with us anymore. That sounds a bit harsh. Not with us in this user group. He's just too busy to contribute. But we are doing this user group virtually every 3-4 months. We're trying to do once a quarter. We already have some good plans coming for the year. We're not as efficient like I've seen in the analytics and the public and some of these bigger user groups. Then they already planned all their sessions for the year. But we're happy that we managed to do one. So if you would like to take, I think it take you 30 seconds to either go into this link in here. Using the QR code, or maybe you, Dennis, could paste in that URL also in the chat. The only question is, where are you signing in from? So you can search in the map, just put in the city or roughly location where you're from, and then we can see. We're going to see it later on. We have a map later on where we can look at this as well. So we get it on a map because we love maps. So we us three are the ones who are running this show. Dennis, who is a Tableau visionary, an ambassador, and a really big lover of maps, or anything to do with maps and putting it in Tableau. So he's also presenting a bit later today. I'm also a now second-year visionary, been an ambassador for 5 years, I think it is, and I also am a big fan of maps, not a big fan of Tableau and Mapbox, not updating the Norwegian map and when we do changes every 3-4 years, but that's another thing. And then we have Teddy, who is not joining us today, I think, but it's also pretty late for him. So we are trying to do these meetings to cover, well, all of the world, but switching a bit so it's more Asia-friendly sometimes, and then more EMEA, US-friendly sometimes as well. So just some housekeeping. The event is recorded and not... this is the benefit of doing it virtually. You don't forget to unmute yourself, because last Norwegian Tableau user group, there were so many people in-house and just a few virtually, and I was so focused on presenting and watching the screen that I forgot until halfway through my presentation to unmute myself for the people who were virtually joining. So that's the benefit of showing up. If you have any questions, put it in the chat or in the Q&A, and then have fun. Today we are focusing on the Iron Viz, which is now, I don't know how many years that has been going on, but we have, or Tableau has announced the top 10, including the top 3 who will be on stage in San Diego in 1.5 months, less than 40 days from now. And our team has been scanning through not just the top 3 or top 10, but all the submissions to find who are using maps or who are adding spatial data or spatial visualizations into their Vizes. So we can invite them into this user group as well. One other thing that will happen at the Tableau conference is something called the Vizes. And, well, me and Dennis can't be nominated for anything because we're visionaries, so good for us, but we can be nominated, or this user group can be nominated. So if you scan this code, there's a Google sheet that you can fill in. You can fill in for all kinds of nominations, but I mean, all these user groups are doing the same thing. So I think it boils down to how many bother to do this / how many members do you have. But if we get some votes, we are really happy. So you can do that, and me and Dennis will be in. Or are you coming? By the way, Dennis, I'm heading over at least, so I'll take the trophy if we get it, or we can do that together. So this is the agenda. The introduction is more or less done. We're going to look at 3 Iron Viz submissions, roughly 20 minutes each. And we all know when people start talking, it might take longer, it might take shorter. We'll see. But the idea is that Rob, WenBin, and Dennis will share their Iron Viz submission, and then we will have some questions for them as well if they haven't answered all of our pre-prepared questions in the end. And obviously, if you guys who are joining in, please put the questions in the chat as well. And then we're finishing up with some information about TC. So if you haven't signed up, there's a specific discount code we can offer from Tableau as well. And then we're done, I guess, for today. So these are the speakers. And Dennis, you can start by introducing the first one.
Thank you, Tori. So last week at the Tableau Public TUG, Rob was the one who introduced me. And so just full circle, I had the honor of introducing him at our TUG. We're in for a treat. Rob is currently a specialist BI analyst at JAL. Prior to that, he spent 16 plus years at the London Northeastern Railway. He's a 2-time Tableau ambassador, 7 Vizes of the day. And then we're in for a treat because his Iron Viz submission was top 10 this year. What number, Rob? Oh, I don't know. Outside the top 3.
Yeah, outside the top 3 doesn't matter, does it? So.
Okay. Specifically, when were you mentioned? No, I'm just kidding.
I think I was 8, if I'm
right.
Yeah.
Okay. But top 10, so we're in for a treat. And he's right now situated in York, England, in the UK. Okay, there you go, Rob.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Yeah, it did feel a bit full circle after introducing you last week. So yeah, very, very pleased to join, and yeah, I'm really excited to share this. It was such a fun project to build. So yeah, looking forward to talking you through it. So yeah, as Dennis mentioned, this was my entry into Iron Viz this year. It's my 3rd entry into Iron Viz, so I've done 3 in a row, and it's been great. When I look back at my first entry, it was vastly different to this one, but yeah, it's progressed very, very well over the 3 years. So it was a really nice surprise to get top 10. So who am I? Yeah, as Dennis introduced me, he talked through a lot of this, so I won't go over it again. But yeah, I live in York with my wife and an 11-year-old son, and I've got a noisy dog, Trevor, who hates pigeons, and there's a few in the garden. So I've tried to block him out, but if you hear barking, he's seen a pigeon. I'm a big fan of sports movies and problem solving, and I'm really passionate about Tableau. I love building fun Vizes and crazy stuff on my Tableau public profile. We do a lot of business regimented dashboards at work, so it's really nice to explore all the different techniques and different things you can build when you're not restricted. So I'm just going to do a little history lesson first before I get into it. So in version 2020.4, Tableau introduced multiple marks layer support for maps, which is a real mouthful of a name for a tool, but it commonly goes by map layers in the community. And what that enabled you to start stacking things on top of each other on maps and in Tableau visualizations in general. And this really sort of opened up the world of what you can build in Tableau now. However, it doesn't have to be just maps. This tool, you can use it. It was implemented for use with maps, but the community always finds a way to do things differently. So they worked out you could basically build anything you want in Tableau using this functionality. And as long as you can understand that it's just plotting an XY coordinate, it allows you to build layer upon layer and build some really cool stuff. And the reason I kind of talk about this is when I get to my viz, you'll see it's built hugely on map layers. There's so many things on top of each other which you wouldn't be able to do normally without this functionality. So yeah, it was I don't agree with the name they called it. It's a bit of a mouthful, but yeah, it's a great functionality. So this is my viz. It was called From Empire to Identity, How the World Came to Dinner in Britain. Initially, when the category was announced, I wasn't sure what I thought about it, what to do. I felt quite restricted, and I did struggle for ideas to start with. But then I finally honed in on, I wanted to really work on my storytelling. So I came up with this idea of Britain's food culture has changed so much over the years since we've been importing all these different spices and different ingredients into the UK. And it really has changed the food culture. So I wanted to focus in on everything that was coming into the UK. So I started off with this big map of what was coming in over the years. Don't get me wrong, this isn't everything we've imported. The hardest part of this Iron Viz was getting data. Took me ages and ages to find things. So I got to a certain amount of ingredients and spices and things and just capped it at that because it was taking so long. But yeah, the idea was we start a top level view of a map showing all these different countries from around the world that have impacted what we eat today in the UK and how it's changed our dinner plate. From there, I wanted to sort of take the user on a journey, and it was all about the storytelling. Like I said, I've really given it sort of a treasure hunt style map theme. I wanted to let the user interact. There's loads going on that they can click on and do things with and make it fun. And if you've been on my public profile, you'll see most of my viz are fun and playful, and there's treasure hunts and there's maps and all sorts of things you can interact with and sort of play with. So I've really tried to put that throughout. But this sort of second stage, we've gone from the big picture. In this second stage, I wanted to sort of start narrowing down the story, focusing on one particular area. We love curries in the UK. We eat them all the time, especially in our house. My wife particularly likes spicy curries. I'm a bit of a wuss when it comes to curries. I can't handle too much spice. So it sort of worked well. I thought, yeah, there's loads going on with curries. It's one of the biggest dishes in the UK now. So the idea of this was to create a timeline. But I didn't want to just create a normal timeline, straight line, curvy line. I wanted to create something completely bonkers and base it, like I said, on that treasure map theme. So I came up with this curvy trail that looks like almost like a pirate ship sailing around the seas. And this was built completely in Tableau, and I'll go into a little bit of how I've done that. So the idea of this timeline is to take the user from that top level, take them through the years up to today, see what's been introduced, and then use these orange call outs to start bringing in the idea of we're going to really focus in on the curry in the UK and sort of get their mind thinking, right, this is where the story's going. This is what I need to start thinking about. From there, I wanted to add in another map and another sort of focus on the UK to make it all about the UK. And this was, again, I scraped a load of data from the web. There's a public directories that you could pull all the restaurants, well, not all restaurant data, a lot of restaurant data from, and it gives you all locations. And you put some tagging in. I looked for South Asian, Indian food, and it brought me back all the restaurants in this directory that were based in the UK. And the idea of this, I wanted to show how big an impact it had and how many cities were now had so many restaurants, and this was driving culture and driving change and allowing people to eat this food more regularly. So yeah, this map focuses on, sort of gives you that real call outs with the color dots to show where it's popular, how many establishments there are per 100,000 people, and yeah, give you that idea of where it is in the UK. Next step, this was sort of my favorite bit of the whole viz. This was my sort of pantry cupboard. This was the idea behind this was I wanted the user to be able to go, right, I've got these spices in my cupboard. What curries could I actually make using this? So the idea was they can click on the spice rack, add the different spices to this sankey that will highlight along there. And when you get the right selection of spices, it will highlight which curries you can do. But yeah, this was a lot of fun to build, and a big shout out to Tristan Gillivan and the DataViz. I used his AdViz tool initially to get the basic sankey layout. It gives you all the data you need and a basic layout, and then from there you can start to manipulate it to give you more things. So it gave me the ability to add in all these different labels and different bars and the color parameters and things like that. So we've got down from the big picture, where they came in, when they came in, where it's popular in the UK. Now, what kind of curries you can make with the different spices that we've now got readily available to us. And the final sort of stage of the viz, I wanted to sort of bring that personal touch into it. I wanted to sort of make sure it was me telling my story and about how these foods have impacted our household. So it was sort of bringing that treasure hunt almost to an end as well. And there's little treasure chests at the end, which I'll go into when I go into Tableau. But this just sort of was highlighting 8 of our favorite dishes as a family, why we like them and where they come from and things like that. So that's kind of an overview of the viz, but let's actually look at it in Tableau and look at some of the cool stuff, well, I think cool, that I did to build it. So like I said, initially, I tried to build everything in Tableau. So other than like the title and some of the scroll images and some of the little images, everything you'll see on here is all built in Tableau. And I like the challenge of that because, like I say, with map layers, you can pretty much build anything. My initial plan was to, I did actually want an unfolding treasure map style view. So as they went across different sections, it almost higgledy-piggledy unfolded all the way down the screen. But I decided it wouldn't work. So I did go slightly renegade and go for this horizontal scroll. If you look at Iron Viz submissions, normally the majority are a long scroll, and that's what people stick to. But yeah, this felt more of a treasure map going along the route, following what was happening. So if I just look at the map to start with, I did a few sort of cool tricks on this to make it give me what I was wanting to. So there was a lot of, obviously, if you just use the standard maps in Tableau and bring in the country, it gives you a lot of extra stuff around. I didn't want the Arctic showing, because it was sort of not adding anything to it. So what I did, I brought in just a fake data set of all the countries I actually wanted, and it is the majority of the world other than the extremes. And I gave them their own little section within the view. So using one layer of maps, I highlighted all the countries that weren't importing into the UK. And then the second one, so the bluer color, wait, unhid it. The second one was the countries that actually wanted, we've imported different things from, and I wanted the users to be able to select those separately. And by doing that, it allowed me to have different tooltips for them. So the ones that didn't do anything, it just tells you what country it is. Whereas if you hover over, I have to do it on here, if you hover over one of the countries that did import something, you can then go onto it, see what came into the UK from that country, when it came in. And actually the bit I like is what it's currently used for. So you can start to see, oh, actually, these things have impacted lots of different foods along the way. But yeah, by using map layers on this one, it's given me the ability to have different parts of the map showing, different styles, different tooltips for them. I can have these lines as a separate thing going into the UK. And again, you can hover over these to see the different things going in. I've not fixed the tooltip on that one because I changed it. But yeah, I thought it was a nice, impactful way of showing, actually, we've taken in a lot of different things from around the world that have impacted the UK. So that second part, this is, like I said, I wanted to build this in Tableau. So this entire line is hundreds and hundreds of points along the way. And when I initially built it in desktop, I had it so as you hovered over the line changed color, and it followed your path through it. But one of the key shout outs I'll do, if you're ever building on desktop and going up to public, always check what the rendering and how it reacts on Tableau public. Because as soon as I put it on public, it pretty much crashed my workbook. The colors wouldn't update properly. The line was sort of shooting all over the place. But yeah, it just showed you can build a curvy timeline if you want to. And I'll just give you a quick example of what I did to do this. So what I did, I went into Figma. I drew out this curvy line. I tried to I had an idea. I'd sort of semi-sketched out where I was going to put the plots along the way. So I basically just drew a line using the line tool, put some curves on it. And once you've got that, you can then export that as an SVG file. And that SVG file looks like this, absolute nonsense unless you understand this kind of stuff. But from there, basically all this is doing is it's telling you what points the different line is when it's turning, things like that. I built out a Python script which took this, ingested it. It then mapped it out into, I used about 500 points in the end, all with XY coordinates. And because it uses, as long as you use enough coordinates when you're building it out, or curves and things like that, it allowed me to have that sort of curve path throughout it. So yeah, I'd recommend if you want to try something different, look into how you can plot something on an XY layout. It will allow you to build anything. But again, the benefit of doing this, it allowed me to have multiple different things. So you can have different highlights for the years, different ones for where there were imports. I can then start to call out my my curry information, so I can bring that into the user information as well. So yeah, it was really fun to build. Although I'm not a big fan of Python, but I'm getting better at it. Next up, so again, this map was the one I was wanting to highlight all the restaurants and takeaways and things like that. And it was just a simple heat map type plot where the circles show what the density, what the concentration is per 100,000 people. So the initial thing, it's just this is where it's popular. This is where you get the most restaurants per 100,000 people. But the bit I really liked is I wanted to do this initial call out, which gave you a map. But within this map, you can then start to hover over some of these places. So if anyone was from the UK in one of these cities, they could start to see what was near to them and websites if it was available. So yeah, sort of almost giving them some inspiration to go and try some of these places. And then also, if you wanted to look at any of the other cities, I put this little pop out using dynamic zone that would allow you to then get your city you're interested in. You can zoom in, find where you live, find a restaurant, see if it's go and try it out. So it's a good way to use almost a zoomed out map to give you the ability to get into the more detail and explore further without overloading the initial view with all that data. Next one, just go through Sankey quickly. So again, like I say, the initial Sankey was built out using the DataViz's AddViz tool, which gave me the basic premise. But the bit I added, so if I start to add a few more spices, I think it's cardamom and cinnamon, was it? Yeah, so once the user's added all the correct spices, it will then sort of highlight the curry that you can make with those spices. Obviously, you'll need all the other ingredients as well, but it's a good start for the users to be able to go, actually, I can now go make a pasanda and a korma. I've got these right kind of things. But my favorite bit on this whole thing, which it isn't obvious, but when I was creating these labels that would join from the spice rack to the Sankey, it was, if I'd left it as it normally was, it was cutting through the middle of the label. So I put a bit of a hack in where every time you select one, it shifts the label slightly upwards. So yeah, there's those tiny little details which I really enjoy doing just to make the user experience slightly more better. And yeah, little touches just for finish it off and give the user a great experience. And then finally, like I say, I brought it all together with this dinner table style circle, the round the world of food. And then if you hover over each one, it tells you a little bit about that food, where it's from, but also I've put my own personal touch in there of why we as a family like these things. And as I said, I like playful things. So throughout this viz, I added a little almost treasure hunt of dishes. So you open up the scroll, it tells you what you're looking for. You're looking for 8 hidden meals. And I've selected 7 of them just to make it quicker to show you. But if we go across to the end, you can see there's one last to select, which is here. And at the minute, it won't let me into the treasure chest because I've not selected them all. So if I try and click on that, nothing happens. But once I've selected all of them and got all of my treasure hunt, this then lights up for me. And sort of the your treasure, the Easter egg at the end of the whole thing was the best tikka masala recipe. I can't guarantee this is the best one. I did a bit of Googling and sort of found whichever one was rated the highest. But yeah, this is your sort of Easter egg at the end of your treasure hunt. You can go in, get the recipe for this best tikka masala, go away, make it at home, and enjoy curry as much as everyone else does. But yes, that's a sort of quick overview of all my dashboard, some of the fun bits I use with it, how I've used maps to tell the story. But yeah, there's a lot of playful bits in this and loads of fun features for the user to explore and interact with.
Thank you, Rob.
No problem.
Are there any questions?
Actually, just curious, how long did it take you, to build this entire business?
Every year I say I'll track the hours, and I never do. But hours and hours. It was the idea took longer than it should have. The data gathering was painful, so that was slow. But once I'd sort of got into the design and started building it out, the sort of layout came quite quickly, and I knew exactly what I wanted to show. But it all comes down to those fine details of making sure everything's lined up correctly. You've got the right little bits in there, and obviously adding in the playful nature of the scrolls that open and things like that, and the hidden treasure hunt. They're the bits that take time. And then the final top tip I was going to say, what you can also do with any chart, I know you can, hopefully most people know accessibility is one of the judging criteria, and if you don't use any imagery, you should put alternate text on it. But one of a colleague from work pointed out that you can also do it for a worksheet. So if you click on any worksheet and go to worksheet accessibility, you can also do the same alt text for any worksheet. So I spent time doing that kind of stuff as well, which obviously isn't 100% necessary, but I thought it was quite a nice touch to anyone that was using a screen reader. They'd get that full detail of what's going on. But yeah, I would say more hours than I probably should have spent on it, and I think my wife would agree.
Did you make that curry when you were done?
Sorry?
Did you make that curry when you were done?
We did actually have that. Well, we had one about 2 or 3 weeks later. I was a bit curried out by the end of it.
Yeah, so people are inspired and like what you've done. There was a question now from Afrina. You can
Yes.
read it so we don't get the feedback.
Yeah, so yeah, it's probably not the best for readability. I'd agree with that. But I wanted to push myself to build something I've not built before. And again, trying to stick to that sort of treasure hunt, treasure map style theme. I wanted to make it wiggly. But yeah, if you were taking this on just face value of how quickly can you read it, definitely not the best way to visualize a timeline. But for what I wanted to do, I thought it hopefully worked quite well to give that fun experience of following the path through the decades and whatnot.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Amazing work.
All right, thank you very much. And yeah, sorry for the echo.
Definitely gives us a sense of what it takes to be top 10, I think. I mean, what I got out of it was just all the, I mean, kind of the little details, the thought that went into all those little details. I mean, makes the viz, I think totally makes the viz, right? Like, I mean, you have like the big charts, the maps and things like that, but it's all those little details that really add a whole lot to it. So thank you, Rob. All right, I have a pleasure to introduce our next presenter, WenBin. He's currently a sales engineer at Dataiku. Is that how you pronounce it? Is that close or?
Yeah, close. Dataiku.
Cool. Okay, great. Based in Singapore. He is a recent graduate from Nanyang Technological University based in Singapore. And I just learned that he also spent a semester abroad at Queen University, which is based in Kingston, just 2 hours from Ottawa here in Canada. So, and I believe he was a student ambassador. Is that correct, WenBin? But he's, or a current Tableau ambassador?
So last year, it was my first time as an ambassador,
Yeah.
student ambassador. I was with the student ambassador. Today, this year, I'm the community leader.
Okay, great. So 2-time Tableau ambassador, and so a youngin, But if you take a look at his profile, some really good stuff. And of course, he has his Iron Viz submission for this year that he'll present. So welcome, WenBin.
Thank you so much. So just before I go into the viz itself, so just wanted to give some background and my inspirations. So rightly pointed out, I just actually recently graduated from university last year actually, and I think regarding Tableau, I was very new. So if the next slide, so if I was to rate my overall competency in Tableau, it would be like 3 out of 5 stars. I'm still exploring many different features every day. And interestingly, for maps, I have before trying out this visualization or trying out these features in Iron Viz, I didn't really have a lot of experience with maps. So this was the first time I was trying something new, and I was doing a lot of research for it. And Iron Viz also relatively new. This year was my second submission. The first one being in, when interestingly, while I was in an exchange in Canada, took some time rather to do up a story about heart disease, right? But so that is the backdrop. And going into Iron Viz, I also had a few. So I had some constraints, which is really just surrounding time, because it was a bit busy during that period of time at work. So with that time constraint, it had me reframing what did I want to get out of Iron Viz. So personally, if I was to evaluate, the visualization I built, in terms of storytelling, in terms of the overall UX and design, there's a lot to be improved upon. But that is okay because for me, I was clear about the objective. Number one is that I wanted to take the opportunity to learn as much as possible, and in the process, experimenting with new techniques. So interestingly, I had the idea as well of trying to track how I spend my time while building a visualization. I spent about 34 hours, which I think pales in contrast to what you guys have done for your visualizations. But if I was to quickly break it down, right? So 10% of the time, about 3 hours, was spent over several days, kind of researching more about the topic. Then after that, again, because I felt I had a similar pain point where really it's about curating or gathering data and creating that data set. So that took 25%. And afterwards, what you see here, and the 17.5% is really just experimenting with different layouts in Figma. And it's really the iterative process. So once I got a first draft out, then I started trying to build different visualizations. But it's really a back and forth during that last stretch. So that was how I spent my time. And actually, so why was it that why did I choose to implement maps into my visualization? It is because, interestingly, Dennis, I have actually been following your work for quite some time already. And the first viz that I was introduced to is the Kyoto cherry blossom. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. How did you do this and stuff like that, right? So those were some incredible things I saw with maps capability. And I wanted to try to, at least look into where can I start, a good starting point. And that led me to the actual visualization. It's a very long, it's a very long visualization, but because the topic for Iron Viz was about food, and I'm based in Singapore, Southeast Asia, right? So we are like a melting pot, and we do take pride in our food as well. I wanted to kind of find a way to tell a story of how food came from different parts of the world, right, into Singapore, and how it ended up being a hawker center. So just for some context as well, a hawker center is a UNESCO World, I think it's under the UNESCO World Heritage. for culture, right? It is this concept where you have one location, and you have in this one location there are multiple stores that sell different cuisines. So you could have one store that sells Chinese food next to a store that sells Malay food next to one that sells Indian cuisine. And historically speaking, the reason why how the hawker center came about was because when the Singapore government was building Singapore up after the Second World War, the government said that, hey, I wanted to have a city that is clean, and I don't want to have these street side vendors. I want to bring them into buildings and give them proper facilities, and that's how the idea of a hawker center was born. So I just wanted to shed a bit of that history inside the visualization as well. So in this visualization that I created, there are three charts that I used map layers or some sort of maps. The first one is, of course, the passage of food. So instead of in Tableau, usually if you want to do a midpoint, it is kind of like a straight line most of the time. But I wanted to add a bit of flavor and have it as a sigmoid to kind of to kind of have like a sigmoid version, just to test around and tinker around with the different capabilities, right? So that was the first one. The second one is the map of Singapore and the hawker centers, right? So if you can, so let me see if I can zoom in here. Okay, it doesn't seem like I can zoom in, but maybe if I was to describe this visualization, actually, let me just hit to my Viz over here. What I wanted to do with this visualization was to show how deeply embedded the idea of a hawker center is in Singapore society, right? So if you see in this over here, you can see these gray dots, right? So these are like housing areas in Singapore. The red dots are the hawker center locations, right? So you can, for example, Senja Hawker Center, and you have their postal codes as well. The gray circles that you see around these red dots, that is a buffer area, a buffer area that I created. You can change the size of this buffer area by in this case it's distance, right? But I kind of estimated, what's the average time taken to cover a distance. So I can change it to 400 meters and that buffer zone decreases, things like that. In terms of how I got this data, very interestingly, the Singapore government has this portal called DataGov that has some of this information available for download for the public, right? So if you ever want to try to experiment with maps, you can go to this site. What I have here is like train stations geospatial data. So I could download these files and just do some, and using map layers as well, just put together the final visualization you see here. So the lines are like the train stations. I also, using map layers, I could also add the locations of facilities like childcare centers, right? And then you're able to see the areas in green. Then there's also sports facilities and etc. So that was the kind of the idea to behind this Viz, to really showcase how embedded the idea of hawker centers are in Singapore society. Yep. So on to the last visualization here. So this is kind of using map layers in an interesting way. So what I wanted to show was that across multiple cuisines, we all have similar or common ingredients, right? And I was trying to experiment and think, okay, how can I show this, right? I didn't want to do a conventional bar chart or yeah, I didn't want to do a conventional bar chart or something like that. And when in my research, I actually came across an old visualization from Kimberly Scott. And over here, so she, in her visualization, is this Moms Who Viz, and you can see it's like a survey to women, to moms in the Tableau community. She asked them different questions, and she represented the values of this questions in this kind of visualization. I was very intrigued, so I was trying to experiment and see how she did it. And if I was to go into here, so just give it a moment to load. So over here, I do apologize first because I'm in Tableau public and I'm just editing the workbook, right? But you can see that, maybe let me open the folder. So you can see all the formulas that were used is in this hawker dishes folder. You're able to, so let's say if I preview and edit, it's basically creating a point in, just creating like a make point. But I'm adjusting the coordinates or the locations, the coordinates of the components. Yeah. So how, for example, maybe let me show as an example, right? So let's say if the center of this was like a 0, 0, what Kimberly Scott would do is that the visualization on are you a night owl, which is the crescent moon. So it could be like a x plus 0.1, y plus 0.1, something like that, right? So, and that's what I tried to do as well for my visualization here. So you could see like midpoint, the vegetables would be, okay, rather the vegetables that were used, it would be like the row value plus 0.16, the column value plus 0.16 as well. So if I was to show the vegetables over, if I was to open it up here, then you can see the plot, right? But because we are in Tableau Public right now, it's not rendering properly. But if you go out into the main dashboard again, and if you scroll down, then you can see, hey, actually, so given the point of origin plus 0.16 in X and Y value, I am able to plot the vegetable icon on the top right-hand corner of a plate. Yeah, so that is kind of like the ideas that I wanted to incorporate into my visualization, my Iron Viz submission. So let me, and I think this is the, so, and this is the end of it. So again, because due to the time constraint, I could only create a certain amount of visualizations and charts, but I wanted to take the opportunity to experiment with different concepts. And in this case, for this submission, I experimented a lot with map layers, and just visualizing data on maps as well. Yeah. So that's all. And yeah, do let me know if you have any questions.
Oh, great job, WenBin. It's a great visualization overall. Visiting hawkers in Singapore is probably top 10 in my bucket list of things to do.
For sure.
Yeah. So great visualization.
Thank you.
So I was wondering, so you had that little kind of chart showing kind of what percentage was spent on what. So I figured the learning was a big part of it as well, right? Because this was the first time that you spent doing maps, really doing maps, and maybe working with map layers to this extent. So I'm wondering like how much of that time was spent on just trying to learn and kind of experiment as well.
Oh, I would say.
Or are you counting that time also in that 34 hours?
Oh yes, it is that time. It's also compressed into those 34 hours. Yeah.
Okay, but what percentage do you think? Like how much time do you think you spent on just learning?
I would say it's like I would say maybe about 60 to 70% of the time was spent learning. Because again, I wanted to because again, I for me, I view Tableau Public as a repository of untouched potential, right? Because there's so many different workbooks out there, so many things that you can learn. And what I wanted to do was to really look through what are some of these really nice techniques that I want to try to emulate in my own work.
Yeah, and I think it's similar to what Rob tried to do as well. I mean, Iron Viz submissions are probably a good opportunity to really experiment, like outside of what you might normally do in your job, right? And so learning kind of some of these new techniques that you might not necessarily use in your job, but Iron Viz probably provides that space and opportunity to do that, right? So yeah, that's great.
Yeah. See, Rob,
Rob has a question.
Yeah. How long did I take to get the imagery and lay it all out?
It's a lot.
I don't know.
There's a lot of images, right?
That's a lot of it. A learning point for me is I think there's a bit too many. I would say, because when I was reflecting, I felt that maybe because of the sheer number, it kind of causes a bit of info overload. So if I was to redo this, I would kind of reconsider how do I better classify this the data, right? So vegetables must it be is there a way to kind of classify the vegetables or the meats in a better format? So I don't have it took me a really long time, that's all I can tell you, because it was really, back then I was really rushing for the deadline, so it was a back and forth. I was in Figma, I was in Canva, I was in Tableau. It's just like a back and forth process of generating and plotting it in to see how it looks like.
Right. No, it's great though. It's great.
Thank you.
Any other questions from folks?
I haven't seen any others at the moment. So I think we forgot to add the Q&A, but since we're not that many, you can still use the chat. But I've added the Q&A now if there would be more questions coming up. Also love Rob's comments and what WenBin is doing is like, you see what other are doing, you steal like an artist or reuse it, and obviously you also mention who is inspiring to you as well, right? So that's pretty good. Tina has a question regarding the housing map.
Tina, did you want to ask that verbally? Can we just do that? Would that be easier than typing it?
We can do it like this.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I wasn't too sure if it was me or not on unmuting. Hi. I had a question in regards to the housing map. I am possibly doing something similar to this as like a central dispatch by location. How did you come up with that?
How the housing map itself? So
where you had the red dots and then you had the lines for the trains.
Okay. So the long and short of it is that this data is was publicly available by the Singapore government, and I just took the data. So let me just quickly share again. So this was the platform, like the data Singapore. So so what they provide was like GeoJSON files of different things. So for instance, this was the train stations as one layer. Let's try sports facilities, right? I believe that they also had other spatial data. Okay, I can't find the sports facilities now, but basically it's like a compilation of many GeoJSON files stacked on top of one another. So in the Singapore TUG, or rather in Singapore, for public service, we see that there's a trend of people wanting to explore geospatial analytics. So last year, Lewis, who is who's a co-lead, right, for Singapore TUG, actually came up with this map. So again, using the same underlying data, multiple GeoJSON files, you could plot you could plot the facility, like like for example, childcare centers or sports
Right.
facilities on the map here.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, most welcome. If you want this starter workbook, I can just add it to the chat. Sorry. Yeah, so I just added the link of that starter workbook into the chat.
Thank you.
And then this guy, the king of map, as Rob said earlier here, I mean, doesn't need any introduction. It's so big, that list, that we can spend 5-10 minutes just talking about visionary, the ambassador, all these awards and Viz of the day, and obviously on his public profile, there is so many beautiful maps or Viz's with maps, but he's not only visualizing data on map, he also has a great visualization about peeing while sitting. So this guy is really into a lot of stuff, apparently, right, Dennis? So we see this is me in 4 Vizes. That's the cool thing. Rob talked about this yesterday at the session for Tableau Public as well. You can organize your own Vizes. Of course, you have the recent one, but you can organize if you have separate that are maps or business ones or personal ones or into any topics. So you can do that on Tableau Public as well. So I'm not sure why you don't have this peeing while sitting on top 4 there, but down on the right-hand side, we have your Iron Viz submission, where is Goro-San. So I'll leave it to you, Dennis.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tori. All right. So thank you very much. So my name is Dennis Kao. I'm a social work professor based in Canada. And this was my Iron Viz submission for this past year, 2026. Just a couple more things about me. I have done GIS mapping. So people, I think people know me for my maps, but I think it's probably because I do a lot of maps. I've been doing GIS mapping for about 15 years. I use maps and spatial analysis quite regularly in my research. So, for example, mapping health inequities. So, questions like where people live compared to where clinics or community centers or social service agencies are located. Is it geographically accessible, like either by bus or, do people have to transfer 2 times to get to certain places and things like that? So that a lot of my research is focused on kind of accessibility of health services, and mapping, it comes into play. I just discovered Tableau about 5 years ago, 6 years, almost 6 years ago now, in November 2020. And on the right-hand side is my first Viz. Was published in November 30th, 2020, a Makeover Monday project. Many of you are familiar with Makeover Monday. And you'll notice there's a map, right? And so I couldn't resist trying to create a map, because I think what initially inspired me was some of the maps that were coming out. It was November, so every November is the 30-day map challenge, where there's a prompt for each day in November, and people, if they have time and space and the opportunity, will create a map for each day. And so there were a number of maps coming out that were created in Tableau that were really inspiring. And I had no idea what Tableau was. And those maps kind of inspired me to kind of look into what Tableau was. And I've just been hooked ever since. So I've done 6 Iron Vizes since year 1, since I started using Tableau. And you can see, so these are the first 4. And a few of them included maps, of course. And these were, so 2025, I also did a map, and the theme was entertainment. And 2026, I also did, the Viz for 2026 was based on a similar data set, or based on the same data set, based on a similar theme. And so for this year, I really didn't have a whole lot of time. I kind of spent maybe the last week and a half. I finally decided to do it And so I wanted to kind of put something together. So some of the work that I had done last year kind of went towards this viz. And so that was helpful, but I really basically ran out of time because I started so late. But both vizzes are based on the IMDb data set, which was from the Tableau Public's Data Plus TV initiative. And I'll talk a little bit about the show, Solitary Gourmet. So the Solitary Gourmet is a TV show, Japanese TV show that started since 2012. It's based on a manga series. It stars an actor, Yukoda Matsushige. And ever since then, there's been 10 seasons, several specials like a New Year's Day, Christmas Day, etc. And then just last year in January 2025, there was actually a feature movie. And I have yet to see that, but I'm looking forward to it. And the basic premise is it follows a businessman. His name is Goro-San. And he travels around Japan for work. And so I think he's an importer of European kind of interior design decor and furniture. And he travels around and meets with his clients. And the basic premise of the show is he meets his clients. And after he meets his clients, he gets hungry, and then he ends up looking for a place to eat. And the rest of the show, maybe half of the show, is just focused on him eating that meal. Right? And so a very simple premise, but it's become kind of it's become this kind of big phenomenon. 10 seasons later, and a feature movie, just based on this simple concept of a businessman walking around Japan and finding a restaurant to eat. Yeah. So the first viz was actually based on the TV show, and so the IMDb ratings, things like that. So for this year, I just focused on the food and really specifically focused on the geography of the show. So the initial idea was to really identify and geocode all the food places in each episode, but that would have required me to watch every episode again, and I just ran out of time. I didn't have time to do that, and so fortunately, IMDb data in the episode title, in each episode title, it included the dishes that he ate as well as the location. And so I was able to tease out both the food dishes, as well as the location, city, place, or neighborhood or district of wherever the restaurant was. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to look at each restaurant, but I was able to kind of figure out the city or the general geography. And so with that, I was able to create a visualization with two components, the general geography, which is the top half, and then geography by specific cuisine, dish, etc. And I use a little bit of AI, ChatGPT, to basically categorize all the different food dishes and stuff like that by specific cuisine. So Japanese, Chinese, Thai, etc. The specific dish, as well as the type of meat that he ate. He ate a lot of meat, and so I was able to categorize it by the meat type as well. And one thing you'll notice is, I think I was able to put in a lot of time in the top half, and then I just kind of fizzled and ran out of time for the bottom half, and so it's just a bunch of little maps in kind of these kind of a small multiples of maps. Some of my inspirations. So looking at kind of the big map, I started with the big map. I was looking through some traditional paintings, Japanese paintings, and I wanted to kind of just parallel that a little bit, that idea of kind of black and red. So those colors were kind of inspired by the traditional paintings. Really kind of the black but the red really stands out, right? So you notice in that painting, the moon and the cherry blossoms really stand out. So I wanted to really try to have that contrast in the map. And then the kind of second kind of source of inspiration, I really love water lines. You don't really see water lines in a whole lot of maps these days, but in the old kind of maps, you'll notice you probably see these lines that kind of like represent like ripples around the land masses. And so I wanted to kind of replicate that in the map as well. And I created these buffers in QGIS, a GIS tool that I use, and then brought those into Tableau. And you'll notice these lines here, and they have different levels of opacity to kind of create that that ripple effect. So those were kind of two sources of inspiration for this visualization. So in terms of design, so map design, because I've done GIS for so long, I've been trained in map design and cartography, and so I broke it down by like the 5 basic design principles of map making. So visual contrast, balance, figure of ground, hierarchical organization, and legibility. And these are concepts that I think are parallel to those concepts that we think about in broader data visualization as well. But I wanted to kind of achieve that contrast with the really bright red graduated circles to represent, and so the size of those circles represent obviously the number of episodes that took place in that location. In terms of balance, I usually in my designs, I usually start with the big map first. So I laid out the big map of Japan, and you'll notice that it kind of goes in a diagonal from the bottom left to the top right, and leaves all this kind of white space up here and right here. And so I try to kind of fill in that white space with kind of different elements of the visualization to just kind of create that balance, and so that there isn't too much white space. So, oftentimes in data visualization, we want to kind of include more white space to create more spacing and make the dashboard more visible, more legible. In this case, because Japan is situated in a diagonal, there's a lot of empty white space above the diagonal and then kind of below the diagonal. I wanted to fill that space to kind of create that balance. Figure ground is kind of trying to kind of make sure that the map pops out from the background. And so I thought maybe to do that, the dark base map of Japan, very simple, kept it very simple, helped it kind of really pop out. And then I used these squares here for the smaller maps to kind of really just make sure that those maps are clearly delineated for the detailed maps. In terms of hierarchical organization, I really wanted the big map, the main map, to pop out, so that of course had the darker base map, and then the detailed maps had kind of this more gray background. So still clear, you could still see them, but obviously in my mind, they're not as prominent as this main map. And then you'll notice that I included these little roads. These are kind of the major highways. And I did that just to indicate that, okay, these are slightly more detailed maps than this bigger map. And so I think those roads kind of add that additional dimension to the maps these are kind of more detailed maps. And then finally, legibility. I wanted to keep the maps as simple as possible. So in this case, there's really 2 basic layers. So the graduated circles, which are the places where the episodes occurred, and then kind of the base map. And I wanted to keep the base map as simple as possible. And so just keeping it simple, I think it was my effort to try to make sure that legibility was attained. So in addition to the main map, I included 3 detailed maps, and they're here. So the greater Tokyo area, which is this kind of area right here. I also wanted to, because there were episodes, so most of the episodes occurred in the Tokyo area, greater Tokyo area, and I that's probably where most of his business was based. But I wanted to have another detailed map to include all the other areas, cities or other districts in other that were outside the greater Tokyo area, and so that's this kind of second detailed map. And then finally, for 2 episodes, he actually traveled abroad to Taiwan and to Korea. And so those 2 episodes, I wanted to create just another kind of map, or 2 I mean, I guess it's technically 2 maps, one of Taiwan and one of South Korea, just to kind of showcase those episodes. And then finally, the last half, I just pulled this together really quickly. Small multiples broken out by cuisine, meat, dish type, and these are fairly simple versions of the main map, but with a lighter background, and then but it's the same kind of red graduated cylinders. So I created each of these maps. So each of these maps are like a sheet, because I included shapefiles, and so I had multiple map layers as well as shapefiles, and so I'm not sure if there's a way to do this all in one sheet. At least I don't know how to do that. So each of these are a sheet, but then I also included. So what I did was I created the first sheet. So this kind of KPI and label is actually, I created a point which is approximately right here, and here's the here's the latitude and longitude, and then the Japanese and 81 meals are basically labels on top of that point. So I created one sheet exactly how I wanted it to look like, and then I basically duplicated it and then just filtered it for each of these. So fusion, Chinese or Taiwanese, etc., and then meat, and then dish type. Yeah, and then just use kind of containers to try to position them and distribute them across the Viz. Probably not the most efficient way to do things, but anyways. So maps actually played a big part in my visualization. Altogether, there are 24 maps altogether. Pretty map heavy. The first half, I really spent. You notice, there's text, there's the KPIs. I really spent a lot of time kind of keying in on the story. So some of it was helpful because I did some of it last year as well. I would have loved to have a little bit more time to kind of spend and really dissecting some of these results, but time ran out and ended up just kind of plotting these in a small multiple form. Okay. And the good thing is, because I had all this data and November was coming up, I was able to do a few maps, 16 maps for the 2025 30-day map challenge in November. And so you'll notice all these maps are based in Japan. And so I had all that data. I had collected all this data to create these maps from a couple years ago, as well as additional data for this past year. And so all that data went towards these maps. And so it was relatively easy for me to kind of complete these 16 maps over the course of that month. But anyways, thank you for your time. Hope this was helpful.
Really nice use of, obviously, again, maps and but the whole story. And I guess that's one of the benefits, I guess, when you're joining the Iron Viz, if you can reuse something or leverage some of things you've done before as well. There's a couple of questions from Rob first. Are there any key things when designing maps that users get wrong or should stay away from? My answer to that is don't use maps just because you can, even though I love maps, but yeah. That is something that I see so many times.
Yeah, I mean,
there's countries in here. I need to put all countries in the world in a map.
Yeah.
And color them by something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing you need to ask is whether you even need a map, right? And I think one thing that I encourage folks to kind of think about is trying to be more intentional about the maps. So Tableau makes it so easy to bust out a map, right? You have like city or country information. Tableau automatically recognizes the countries or recognizes the cities in your data set. You double click the pill and boom, you have a map, right? But I would encourage you to kind of think about, do all the defaults make sense? Do all the background layers that are automatically default when you create a map like that, are they needed? Do you need, so for example, if you are creating a map of Canada and you have, and it ends up with a map of Canada and the rest of North America, right? US, Mexico, do you really need those other countries in there, for your map and towards your story? So I really, just encourage people to just be more intentional about those defaults. Don't accept them right away. Kind of think through, do they add, do they clutter your map, things like that. I think that's, one thing that I've noticed in maps, that Tableau makes it so easy and it's beautiful. I tend not to use the base maps because I like to have a little bit more control. So I bring in actual spatial data to kind of create all these maps. So the outline of Japan is actually a shapefile that I brought in because I wanted a little bit more control over the color and things like that. So, maybe think through and to be a little bit more thoughtful about the defaults would be my main tip.
Yeah, well, that's answering James's question as well about the ripple effect. It's the extra layer that you've added in there, right?
Yeah, so those are basically buffers around around Japan. So I don't remember, excuse me, I don't remember. So I think I had 3 buffers, each of them separated by maybe 2 to 5 kilometers. And so then the buffers create a line that then I brought each of those into Tableau and kind of manipulate them and change them in terms of the opacity of the border and things like that. So each of those, you'll see 3 lines. So each of those are like a separate map layer that I manipulate. Yeah, so a little bit more kind of intentionality and a little bit more work behind it, but I think I love water lines, and I think it adds a kind of a great feature to the map.
Yeah, especially if you have a big coastline, like, well, Japan obviously, but also for Norway would have worked on the coast of Norway, for example, or across as well. So that's cool. Example in all of those, more or less all of those maps we see in this, of those 16 as well. If you're looking at Japan, you don't need to have everything around it. And I do the same thing when they are in Norway. We don't care about those damn Swedes. So let's get rid of Sweden and focus on the data on that country where we actually have data. And I agree with James. Sometimes when I find something cool on public and I want to download and re-engineer it, and then you can only download it as a PowerPoint, that's a bit annoying. But that's how it is sometimes.
Okay.
So thank you, presenters. Let's go back to
thank you so much.
Quickly to the slides. This is some of the data we've collected over these few years. We've been doing this user group, and really cool that some people actually live on the Null Island outside of Africa as well. So we have some dots in there, but we have people from all over the world that have joined this user group. So that's cool, and hopefully we will get more as well. Not sure why South America is not interested in maps, but we'll see if there will be more in the future. So we're gonna have a next meetup in May, June. There's so many cool new stuff that is added to Tableau since the latest couple of versions as well. So we're planning on maybe trying to get somebody from the Tableau team to speak about those, or we do it ourselves, or we get some of you who are interested to speak. You can then scan this code and fill in a form, and then we will be in touch. We're always looking for people who have a great story to share. But now in less than 40 days, it's the Tableau conference in San Diego coming up. Biggest question is, of course, when they announce next year's Tableau conference, is 3 years the charm, meaning that it was 3 years in Vegas in a row. Now it's third year in a row in San Diego. Will there be a new location? We don't know, but quickly, what is it? Well, of course, you probably know what it is already. It's the biggest Tableau conference. It's growing and growing, going back to almost to, was it 2019 before COVID? There was 19,000 people there. It's growing steadily. But there's a lot of good sessions, and the good thing is that if you can't go, obviously, then there is this Salesforce Plus. So if you're not going, then you can go to Salesforce Plus and see a lot of these sessions recorded. But if you're going, there's all these cool people. I'm just including myself because I'm going there, but cool other people than me as well going to be there. And if you have seen people on user groups and you would like to say hi to them, take a selfie or praise what they've done, that's a great place to do that. Of course, Tableau will talk about AI and all kinds of interesting things, new features. Devs on stage is always my favorite session to see all the new features coming. Just so that the Flerich twins will have the community keynote again with all kinds of fun tips and tricks as well. There's a lot of breakout sessions. There will be hands-on learning. I'm going to be running one as well. So you might see me there in the data village if you want to get some hands-on training. And then if you're arriving the day before, there will be both data and tacos from the San Diego user group. That's always fun. And then Data plus Women also has an event the day before. And a lot of people really have fun to go to the data night out as well to get some free food, free drinks, and hopefully get some more swag to get home. Last conference, I had to buy an extra suitcase to bring all my swag home. My wife is not very happy about that, but that's just me. So if you are coming to San Diego, if you haven't signed up already, you can use this code that you see in here and get a I'm not sure how much it is, but I think it's at least some percentage discount on top of whatever early bird and stuff that you can get in there. So scan this code or scan this QR code and use this TC26D product. If you do that, we also, as the user group, are in a raffle. The user group, or 3 user groups, will win extra money for swag, not for us ourselves, but that we can hand out and give to our speakers as well. So we need to figure out how to give you, Rob and WenBin, something. So I'll reach out to you after to say thank you for being part of this user group. So I think that was it for today. We have nothing in the QA now to answer. There will be an email after we end this session. Please use the feedback to give, feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like. Should Dennis come back and present his how people are sitting or pissing, or I don't know which it is, or Rob going to share his paper plane visualization. Please give us the feedback so we can make 2026 a good year as well. So thank you for joining us. Recording will be up on YouTube during this, before the weekend is over, I guess, if Chris is doing his job. So have a beautiful afternoon, morning, nighttime, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for joining, and see you next time.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, everybody.
Thank you.